and thank you for inviting me to this conference. So I am from the heritage field, but I'm not an archaeologist, obviously. But as you will see in the presentation, a very important part of the conservation curriculum is teaching STEM, and my exam is about chemistry. So I will talk about these topics. Really, the practical, I will talk about my experience. So first, why do conservation students need chemistry? What is the level of their knowledge at the admission exam? I teach a master level course. Then I will discuss the gap between chemists and conservators, and how do we, let's say, develop our method of how do we teach chemistry to conservation students. And at the end, I will show you very briefly one fantastic example how science can be more fun. So why do conservation students need chemistry? I will talk mostly about the part of the education about cleaning paintings. So cleaning paintings is the most frequent and totally non-reversible operation. During the cleaning process, you might have known that chemical solvents are put in a direct contact with the painted surface. And if the painting is over-cleaned, the damage is already done. So I think that these three statements give the answer to the question, why do conservation students need chemistry? This is the example. Just a visual example. On the right hand side, you see some dirty picture area, painting area before cleaning. In the middle here, you see this area that has been cleaned this and this way, and on the left you see the over-cleaned area. And why I put this? Because you see here all the different chemical terms like superficial cleaning with resin salt, with deoxycholic acid, ethanol, and so on. So these are normal terms that conservation use, of course, totally chemical terms. So what is the level that we try to estimate on this admission exam? For example, giving some tests where there are, among other things, these two typical questions, which are totally basic chemistry from, I would say, elementary school level. But not all of them are sure about the answers. So how to make 5% solution of glue, which is something that conservators do every day in the work, and for example, the concept of acid and pH, acidity of the solution. Now, why? So teaching painting conservation in Serbia and in many other countries in Europe, I would say absolutely majority, is linked to art academies. So art academies normally don't have teach their professors, internal professors of chemistry, because that is a small number of hours. So also at the University of Novi Sad, we have external professor of chemistry to teach in conservation programs. And he comes from the Faculty of Natural Sciences. And it turns out that teaching chemistry, although in a basic level for them, they sometimes don't know how to cope with those questions that conservators ask. I think the best match are the chemists or technologists or scientists that work in heritage institutions. They are in daily contact with heritage problems and conservators. But we have, as far as I know, only 4 chemists, or not only chemists, but chemists in Serbia. So 1 in the National Museum in Belgrade, and 3 in the Central Institute for Protection of Cultural Management. But they are not investigators, although they have the best knowledge, I think, the minimum gap, let's say. Chemists who come from the university, many projects of heritage are collaborating, but they mostly do analysis, they give the results, And somehow I feel that they don't then maybe follow or not really understand what is the result or impact of those analyses in future conservation work. So that is the gap. Now, what is our experience? So we have chemistry for conservation and then restoration of paintings, where students have a lot of practice. So on the left-hand side, that is the chemistry. So the professor of chemistry, of course, explains theoretical concepts, but all the examples, so we developed together, let's say, a professor of chemistry and me as a professor of conservation developed these two curricula. All the examples are taken from the conservation practice. So chemists talk about how to make solutions, what dissolves what is the evaporation rate, what is the toxicity, so very important things. On the other hand, in practical, in a conservation, students do a lot of practical conservation work, and I think it is important that they understand, although they come as their educational background very often from art discipline, to understand the importance of scientific-based thinking while working, for example, in cleaning papers. So they have to acquire this scientific-based logic, for example, when performing cleaning tests, choosing the suitable solvent, slowing down the evaporation rate, for example, or self-protective measures when using toxic solvents, which are all very, very practical things in conservation work. Developing together and also following these lectures weekly during the semester, we hope that that is one of the ways to create interdisciplinary. I think this creating interdisciplinary is really difficult. So here are some illustrations. So first, students go to the Faculty of Sciences, to chemistry lab, where the professor explains, so this young lady is a professor of chemistry, explains to conservation students basic things, how to use equipment, and these theoretical concepts. Students use equipment and learn principles guided by chemists. Then we come to the conservation lab, and they repeat the whole process, creating in these slides, you can see creating all these small bottles are solvent tests just for cleaning. They prepare them by themselves, but with all the written instructions and with very close observation. And then here is the moment when they are instead in front of the painting with also they are afraid and so on to make damage. But you see how it looks like. They have all the sheets, the procedures, the properties of solvents, and they start with the cleaning test. And they have to put their hands on the painting, and they are in this case also very, very closely followed by the teacher and with lots of discussions, but they do that, let's say, with their hands. And then practice, practice, practice. What we used to do is give different examples. Here the students are working, then they rotate. There are different problems on these paintings. They also are encouraged to explain to each other what was their experience, and so to share and really listen. How do they explain these concepts? How do they just think about cleaning different types of objects? Again, you see the setup for cleaning process. Again, some sculptures or different objects that they have in their hands. And after this, I thought, how could we somehow classify this teaching and learning process? Now, with this, I'm entering in the next few slides within the field of methodology of teaching, which is not my field, but I try to do that. So I found that this scheme can be interesting to somehow, through these 4 stages of learning, like first stage 1, unconscious incompetence. So students at the beginning, they don't know what they don't know. And red is what the teacher should do. We should tell them what to do and don't let them guess. So the stage 2 is conscious incompetence. So they feel uncomfortable. Really, this describes the students when I follow them and realize how much they don't know. They discover it much harder than they thought. Still, they really need direct support, but with some space to try. The third stage, they can perform skill conscious competence, but it's really with attention and concentration. For the teacher, they are still unsure, failure and success. You must let them do, but be always there when they need support. And the fourth stage is unconscious competence, when they can perform. This is expert level, of course, they can perform consciously, but trust them and let them do their work. So I wondered myself, my students, when they, for example, are at the end of their master studies, 2 years course, what stage are they? I would like to be able to say that they are at the stage 3 or beginning of the stage 3. I think that they would judge themselves more in stage 2, but okay, let's say between stage 2 and stage 3, depending, of course, on the particular student. And I found another scheme that I like, so I put it here. So yeah, this is from situational leadership scheme. It's different area, but it fits well for this purpose. This is another scheme. I like this because this is very 5 steps of leadership again, but explains. First step, I do, you watch. So I'm the professor, you're the student. I do, you watch, we talk. Next step, I do, you help, we talk. Third step, you do, I help, we talk. Fourth step, you do, I watch, we talk. So gaining the confidence, and the fifth one, of course, you do, someone else watches. This is the, of course, winning of the teacher who created. And the last slide is, can science be more fun? So my experience is that for students in conservation that comes from really artistic background, science is always a struggle, and they are like, it's hard for them, although I really try hard. I try really to make it understandable, accessible, applicable. I had a fantastic opportunity to be part of this course by ICRON, Communication and Teaching Skills in Conservation Science, where we were given really a lot of inspiration on how to teach science to conservation students. And here you see everything was really with a lot of humor and a game through game. I think this is good. Here you see really serious conservation professors kneeling and trying to measure the length of a room where we were working with an elastic meter. It's of course impossible to be precise. Or here, we were given these extra light feathers, some synthetic material feathers, and a scale that doesn't even feel that, doesn't react to that very, very low weight. And this was like we were always laughing, but the message was very serious. But I think so that the space for improving teaching could be